The launch of Sputnik in 1957 did more than mark the beginning of the space race. It marked the start of new ways of thinking about technology. In the United States, it raised fears of falling behind in science, especially in the emerging fields of space and missile technology. Sputnik, meaning both satellite but also fellow traveler in Russian, led President Eisenhower to push for the creation of the Advanced Research Projects Agency, or ARPA, an organization tasked with ensuring that America would never again be caught off guard on the technological frontier. ARPA's initial mission in 1958 was to cut through the intense rivalry among the Army, Navy, and Air Force over research, funding, and development programs. This would ensure a swift and unified response to the Soviet technological threat. The agency was designed to be a high-level mechanism, reporting directly to the Secretary of Defense, intended to prevent the United States from ever being technologically surprised again. But by the early 1960s, ARPA's mission shifted to focus less on military services and more towards supporting long-term basic research. This was in part due to the creation of NASA, which absorbed many of its space and missile programs, but also due to the influence of individuals such as Joseph Licklider. Lick, as he was affectionately known, was director of ARPA's IPTO, short for Information Processing Techniques Office, a division created to explore advanced computer systems and their potential military applications. But he was a strong believer that computers could and would transcend these narrow purposes. He laid out his vision in the influential essay Man-Computer Symbiosis, where he imagined computers working side by side with humans, enabling them to formulate new ideas, solve complex problems, and communicate across distances in real time. To turn his vision into reality, Licklider began directing ARPA's funding toward a small number of university research labs and private companies that shared his belief in interactive computing. Places like MIT, Stanford, and UCLA received generous support to explore time-sharing systems, in which different users could interact with a computer simultaneously using different terminals. The computer rapidly switched between users' tasks, fast enough that each one felt like they had the whole machine to themselves. This innovation made computing far more interactive and opened the door to ideas such as personal computing. Even after Licklider left ARPA in 1964, his influence endured. The office he once led became a hub for radical ideas about computing, and his successors carried forward this mission. When Bob Taylor took over as director of ARPA's IPTO in 1965, he quickly recognized a growing and frustrating problem. Each university lab they were funding had its own powerful computer system, but operated in isolation. At the time, computers were massive and expensive mainframes, taking up entire rooms. Hardware and software was unique to each machine, making it impossible for any kind of resources to be shared. Not only were these machines unable to communicate with one another, but Taylor himself had an adjacent room in his office where 3 different computer terminals sat side by side, each connected to a mainframe, one at MIT, one at Berkeley, and another in Santa Monica. Each system had its own operating system and login procedures, forcing him to juggle multiple sets of commands just to collaborate with different research teams. Taylor referred to this as the terminal problem. In it, he saw not just an inconvenience, but a barrier to the kind of innovation ARPA was trying to foster. Instead of funding these isolated computing islands, why not build a network? One that would allow all computers to talk to each other directly. Researchers could log in remotely, share software, access data, and work together, regardless of geography. Despite a common myth, ARPANET wasn't created for communication systems to survive a nuclear attack. Its true purpose was to connect researchers, share computing power, and solve the growing problem of isolation between university labs. The network wasn't built for war. It was built for collaboration. It was a bold and unconventional idea, but Taylor knew ARPA had the flexibility to move fast. In a single impromptu meeting with ARPA director Charles Hertzfeld, Taylor laid out the case for solving the multiple terminals problem by linking the systems together. The meeting lasted just 20 minutes. At the end of it, Hertzfeld approved $1 million in funding. And with that, the ARPANET project was born. Part 1. ARPANET. Bob Taylor set out to find someone to lead his project. His choice was Larry Roberts, a brilliant young computer scientist at MIT's Lincoln Laboratory. Roberts had written the entire operating system for the TX2, a groundbreaking experimental computer used for early work in interactive computing and graphics, and had also conducted one of the first long-distance networking experiments, linking the TX2 in Massachusetts with a machine in California. Larry Roberts was initially reluctant to leave Lincoln Labs for Washington bureaucracy, but after several failed attempts to persuade him, Bob Taylor played his final card. He asked ARPA director Charlie Hertzfeld to call Lincoln Labs leadership directly. With ARPA providing more than half of Lincoln's funding, the message was clear. Roberts reversed course and accepted the job, becoming the architect of the ARPANET. With Roberts in charge, in 1967, ARPA convened a meeting in Ann Arbor, Michigan, bringing together principal investigators from the university and research laboratories it was funding across the country. The purpose of the meeting was clear: to introduce the idea of linking the nation's leading time-sharing computers into a single experimental network. These researchers had been leading cutting-edge work in computing, but most had not yet given much thought to the idea of a shared network. Roberts presented his vision: a network of host computers connected directly over telephone lines, with each host responsible for routing traffic and communicating with others. The technical logic seemed sound, but the reaction in the room was chilly. Many researchers were skeptical and resistant to the idea of sharing their limited computing resources with outsiders. Just as the Ann Arbor meeting was ending on a grim note, Wes Clark, an inventive engineer, passed a quiet but transformative note to Larry Roberts. "You've got the network inside out." Curious, Roberts pulled Clark aside, and during the car ride to the airport, Clark laid out a bold idea. Instead of relying on each host computer to manage network communication, a complex and unpopular approach, Clark proposed inserting a small, standardized computer between each host and the network. These intermediary machines would form a separate subnetwork, responsible for routing and message forwarding. Every one of these computers would speak the same language, allowing the host computers to simply interface with one local device, rather than cope with the entire network's complexity. Roberts formalized the idea in a memo, and called these devices Interface Message Processors, or IMPs, the earliest ancestor of today's routers. The document gave the proposal much-needed traction. By offloading the complexity of networking onto a dedicated, ARPA-controlled infrastructure, the IMP design defused technical resistance and political friction alike. Graduate students were also particularly excited to learn that they would receive an additional computer to play around with. The same year, a second computing conference in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, would see Larry Roberts publicly introduce his vision for the ARPANET for the first time. Unlike the tense Ann Arbor meeting, his ideas were received with interest. It was also during this event that Roberts would learn about packet switching, which would be promptly incorporated into his plans. While he was beginning to sketch out plans for his new network, he was not aware that two other scientists, working independently on opposite sides of the Atlantic, had developed remarkably similar ideas. Paul Barron in the US and Donald Davies in the UK had each arrived at the same revolutionary concept: packet switching. The idea of breaking messages into small blocks and sending them across a distributed network. Different from circuit switching used in traditional phone networks, packet switching did not require a continuous connection and allowed for information to travel along multiple routes to be reassembled at its destination, making it ideal for data traffic. Roberts then refined his plan for the ARPA network, proposing to start with 4 initial sites: UCLA, Stanford Research Institute, UC Santa Barbara, and the University of Utah, each location bringing ARPA-funded research to the table. By 1968, All the required technical insights needed were gathered to send out a request for proposals to 140 companies, inviting bids to build the IMPs. Although major companies like IBM declined to bid, several other firms responded with enthusiasm. Among them was Bolt, Baranik and Newman, a relatively small consulting firm in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Initially founded by acousticians and architects, BBN had diversified from sound consulting and noise control into computer research, driven by the visionary Licklider before his time at ARPA. Known for its academic atmosphere and its ability to attract brilliant minds, the company was often described as the third university in Cambridge, after Harvard and MIT. The IMP project was unprecedented in scope and filled with unknowns. Frank Hart, a seasoned systems engineer selected at BBM to lead the implementation, knew the risks well. The network had to be fast, stable, and invisible to users. But no one had ever built anything like it. To tackle the challenge, Hart assembled a small elite team of coders, hardware specialists, and real-time systems experts, eventually known as the IMP guys. Indeed, all the members in the team were men. With just 1 month to write a detailed bid, the BBN team translated the RFP's ambitious goals into concrete designs. The proposal, submitted on September 6, 1968, was more a full blueprint than a pitch. It included flowcharts, fault recovery systems, and performance projections. For the IMPs, they proposed the Honeywell DDP-516 minicomputer, which was roughly the size of a refrigerator. The machine was chosen for its reliability, designed for use in war zones, and its sophisticated input/output capabilities. Its rugged casing, they hoped, would discourage curious graduate students from prying it open. At over 200 pages and costing the company $100,000 to produce, it was the most ambitious and expensive proposal BBN had ever created. The wait for ARPA's decision was tense, punctuated by speculation and second-guessing. Just before Christmas 1968, the verdict arrived. Despite fierce competition from larger firms, ARPA awarded the contract to BBN. The third university was now at the center of engineering the future of communication. Part 2. Building the Network. 1969 would be the year in which Frank Hart's team at BBN embarked on the monumental task of building the IMPs, the very heart of the ARPANET. For $1 million, the contract stipulated the creation of 4 IMPs, with the first scheduled for delivery to UCLA by Labor Day. This ambitious timeline, coupled with the revolutionary nature of the project, meant an intense period of late nights and relentless systems engineering for Hart's team. The first Honeywell IMP prototype, IMP number 0, was a major setback that exposed critical integration issues between the team's innovative design and Honeywell's manufacturing. When it was delivered to BBN, the unit was incorrectly wired and was completely non-functional. This forced BBN engineers to undertake extensive manual rewiring and debugging before testing could even begin. Software development was equally demanding, with programmers crafting lean and efficient code in low-level assembly language. They faced the intricate task of implementing dynamic routing algorithms, allowing packets to navigate the network autonomously, and developing robust error-checking mechanisms. As the summer of 1969 wore on, the pressure mounted. The first production IMP, built to BBN's specifications, finally arrived at BBN just 2 weeks before the scheduled delivery date to UCLA. The team worked frantically to implement the necessary design modifications and successfully resolve a series of issues with the machine. With the deadline looming and a degree of confidence restored, Frank Hart made the decision to ship the computer, and by Saturday, August 30th, 1969, IMP number 1 was installed at UCLA. Within an hour, the IMP and the Sigma-7 host at the site were communicating. A rudimentary but vital exchange that signaled the birth of the ARPANET. Exactly 1 month after the UCLA milestone, IMP number 2 arrived at the Stanford Research Institute in California, which would connect the Scientific Data System's 940 computer at their location. The SRI installation was particularly significant because it provided the second crucial node of the nascent network. Now, 2 disparate computers would be linked through the IMPs, and, critically, converse with each other. The moment of truth came in October 1969, when a UCLA student named Charlie Klein attempted the very first connection over the ARPANET. Sitting at a computer terminal, Klein tried to log in remotely to a computer located at the Stanford Research Institute. He typed the word login, letter by letter. The first 2 letters, L and O, were transmitted successfully, but when he typed the third letter, G, something went wrong. The SRI computer, trying to be helpful, attempted to automatically finish the command by sending back the remaining letters, I and N. However, the terminal program on Klein's end wasn't ready to handle multiple characters at once. It expected 1 character at a time. This mismatch caused the SRI computer to crash. So instead of login, the first message ever sent across the ARPANET was just L-O. Later that same day, however, the connection was re-established, and this time it worked flawlessly. A number of researchers from UCLA witnessed the historic moment as Klein logged on to the SRI machine. The first ARPA network map, rudimentary as it was, now showed 2 interconnected nodes. The installation of IMP number 3 at UC Santa Barbara followed in November. The process was becoming more routine, and the earlier anxieties surrounding the first IMP's delivery had somewhat subsided. By December 1969, IMP number 4 was installed at the University of Utah. This completed the initial 4-node network envisioned by Larry Roberts. The Utah site was particularly interesting, as it housed researchers involved in advanced graphics and night vision technology, hinting at the diverse applications the network might soon support. With Utah connected, the West Coast cluster was complete. The establishment of these first 4 nodes, UCLA, SRI, UC Santa Barbara, and the University of Utah, represented a significant triumph. It demonstrated the feasibility of packet switching and the ability of IMPs to connect diverse computer systems. While the network was still in its infancy, limited in scope, and facing ongoing challenges in protocol development, the foundation had been firmly laid. The once theoretical concept of interconnected computers was now a tangible reality, a testament to the collaborative spirit and relentless innovation of the pioneers who brought it to life. The ARPANET, initially a closed experiment confined to a handful of research institutions, was poised to reveal its potential to a wider audience. The International Conference on Computer Communication, ICCC, in October 1972, held in Washington, D.C., provided the perfect platform. Larry Roberts, now a key figure in shaping the network's future, understood the critical need to demonstrate the ARPANET's capabilities beyond the confines of the research community. Their mission was to showcase the ARPANET's power, not through static displays, but through live, interactive experiences. The demonstration was designed to be accessible to even the most novice user. Attendees would be invited to sit at one of the many terminals, each unique and from various manufacturers, connected to a terminal IMP, centrally located at the Washington Hilton Hotel. From there, they could log on to remote hosts, access applications, and engage in interactive communication. Bob Metcalfe, then a graduate student at MIT, and later the inventor of Ethernet, compiled a booklet detailing 19 scenarios for users, ranging from interactive chess games and geography quizzes to accessing news wires and simulating air traffic control. The The logistical undertaking was immense. AT&T was tasked with installing two 50-kilobit lines into the hotel, a significant feat in itself. BBN's team worked tirelessly to set up the IMP and assist numerous terminal manufacturers in modifying their equipment to connect to the ARPANET. The exhibition room at the Hilton transformed into a vibrant, albeit chaotic, hub of activity, filled with wires, terminals, and a multitude of languages spoken by the converging technical community. The atmosphere was electric, a mix of intense pressure and exhilarating camaraderie. Many participants arrived with their projects still in progress, adding final touches just hours before the preview demonstrations. This was the moment of truth, the chance to prove that packet switching was not just a theoretical concept, but a viable, functional technology. The ICCC 1972 demonstration was a resounding success. While a few glitches occurred, the overall performance exceeded expectations. Hundreds of attendees, many initially skeptical, left with a newfound appreciation for the ARPANET's potential. The event marked a turning point. The ARPANET transitioned from a niche research experiment to a tangible force, captivating the imagination of the computer industry and signaling the dawn of a new era in communication. In the wake of its first great success, a surprising development began to reshape the network's identity: electronic mail. Though the ARPANET had been conceived primarily as a platform for remote computing and resource sharing, the ability to send personal messages between users quickly emerged as its most compelling feature, the network's killer app. This shift began in 1972, when Ray Tomlinson modified an existing file transfer program to send messages between computers and introduced the @ symbol to designate user and host, an elegant hack that gave birth to networked email. Username @ hostname was an effective way to specify a user's location on the network. Adoption was swift. Despite technical constraints, email soon dominated network traffic, driving both grassroots innovation and formal efforts to standardize formatting and headers. More than just a messaging tool, email also fostered a new kind of digital community. Forums like Message Group hosted spirited debate and collaboration, while users began holding casual conversations, inventing emoticons, and navigating the norms of online interaction. What began as a side feature had evolved into the network's defining function, and a precursor to the social fabric of the Internet. As email took root and user demand surged, it became clear that ARPANET's original design, though groundbreaking, would need to evolve to support a much broader, more flexible, and more interconnected future. Part 3. Interconnected networks. The 1970s marked a period of intense innovation in computer networking. While the foundational principles of packet switching were becoming well established, new networks sprang up in parallel to the ARPANET, and with them, new technologies and protocols that would shape the future of the digital world. The Aloha network proved radio-based wireless data transmission across the different islands of Hawaii. SatNet linked research sites between the US and Europe via satellite, and Europe's MPL and Cyclades networks pioneered alternative, decentralized approaches to packet switching. Their success underscored a new challenge: the need for a universal protocol that could bridge these separate networks into an interconnected system. Each of these networks spoke its own technical language, creating isolated islands of communication. At the forefront of this evolution were Vint Cerf and Bob Kahn. Having first collaborated in the early 1970s during groundbreaking tests at UCLA, they developed a deep professional bond and a shared vision for connecting diverse networks. This quest for interoperability led to the birth of the Interneting Project at ARPA in 1973. Their collaboration, spanning months of intense discussion and refining ideas, culminated in the seminal 1974 paper, A Protocol for Packet Network Intercommunication. This paper introduced the revolutionary Transmission Control Protocol, TCP, and the Internet Protocol, IP. collectively known as TCP/IP. In their first version, the two protocols were one, but were later separated. Thus, TCP was designed to handle the reliable transmission of data, breaking messages into packets, reassembling them, and managing errors, while IP focused on routing these packets across the different networks. Before TCP/IP, the ARPANET relied on the Network Control Protocol, or NCP, to manage communication between computers. NCP worked well for the closed, highly reliable ARPANET environment, but it had significant limitations. It assumed that the underlying network itself would be dependable, so it did not include mechanisms for error detection, retransmission, or handling data loss. As a result, connecting different types of networks was not feasible. Transforming the TCP/IP vision into reality required a global collaboration. ARPA sponsored development teams at Stanford, BBN, and University College London to code, test, and refine the new protocols across the ARPANET, SATNET, and packet radio systems. Despite differing technologies and constraints, each test confirmed that TCP/IP could make these diverse systems communicate as one. That proof came dramatically in 1977, when engineers sent data from a mobile radio node in California through the ARPANET and over a satellite link to London, then back again, without error. The demonstration validated the universality of TCP/IP and ushered in a new era of interconnected networks. As TCP/IP gained traction, other networks began to emerge and connect. This burgeoning internetwork gradually became known simply as the Internet. The Cerf and Kahn paper laid the groundwork for what would become the backbone of the modern Internet, a network of networks. This concept would eventually transform the ARPANET from an experimental research project into a global phenomenon. Epilogue. The ARPANET made a crucial official transition from NCP to TCP/IP on January 1, 1983. This Flag Day marked a significant shift, as only machines running the new protocols could communicate over the network. While some sites received grace periods, the transition effectively retired NCP and solidified TCP/IP as the standard for internetworking. This adoption was driven by the protocol's inherent openness and demonstrated effectiveness. By the late 1980s, DARPA, having fulfilled its research mission, began to divest operational responsibility for the ARPANET. While the network itself was decommissioned in 1990, its spirit and underlying technologies lived on. The ARPANET's transformation into the Internet stands as one of the great achievements of the 20th century, a testament to curiosity, cooperation, and ingenuity. What began as a small research experiment now is the very fabric that unites the modern world. This was Where Wizards Stay Up Late by Katie Hafner, first published in 1996. Thank you for listening.